Welcome to the Q Podcast.
Q is about conversation.
If we're really concerned about ending poverty, we've got to be more concerned about creating justice.
Our cultural products as Christians need to both defy and resonate with the culture.
And God's doing amazing things. His church is expanding, his church is growing.
It's not what's the purpose of my life, it's what is the purpose that's been assigned.
Stay curious, think well, advance good. This is Q.
Welcome to another edition of the Q Podcast. I'm Gabe Lyons, and I hope you're ready to laugh a little bit today if you're tuning into this podcast, because we've got one of the funniest people we've probably ever had on the Q stage joining us today. You're going to get to hear my interview with Tony Hale. Some of you are big fans of Tony Hale. Others of you, maybe you haven't heard of him, but he's a two-time Emmy Award winner who's been a part of a couple of series. Maybe you've heard of these. Once he was as Buster Bluth on the series Arrested Development. And then most recently, he's a part of Veep. And in Veep, lots of political humor, lots happening there. And so Tony's just this amazing guy who over the last many years, we've been in touch. We talk a lot about his own commitment to faith and how that plays out in these really unique places that he finds himself. And so we said, why don't you come to Q and let's talk to a bunch of leaders who are sitting here in the audience, many of which are not formally a part of any type of ministry environment. They're out living out their careers, whether it's in media or entertainment like yourself, or politics, or maybe it's that they're in education or business, but they don't always find themselves in typical church-oriented and church language kind of places. And Tony was just the perfect fit to talk to us a little bit more about his role and what it means to act and what it looks like to be in LA and to do this kind of work, and also some of the hard parts about that. And he's very honest about that. But I want us to just tune in. I want us to listen to just a fellow friend out there who's trying to live faithfully and trying to do what he loves. And let's just hear from him and be encouraged by that today. Do we have any people in the room who are Arrested Development fans or Veep fans? Okay. It's kind of like this little cult, you know, and you know it. If you're one of them, you're always trying to convince other people to watch these shows, and they're like, no, I've never heard of it, or I don't get HBO. So at this moment, you're going to get to meet somebody who's just an incredible actor. He's won a couple Emmy Awards, okay, incredible man, family man, but leading in a space in scripted comedy, something that I bet a lot of you in the room haven't done, would be scared to death to do, but he does it with such grace, and he's really funny. But for this conversation, I just want you to get to know how he thinks about comedy, how he thinks about life, and it's only 9 minutes. So join me in welcoming Tony Hale.
Mic on? Hello. Hello. What a relaxed environment.
Have a seat on the couch.
Hello. Just like one big living room.
So,
You guys have heard some very, very smart people today. I want you to lower your expectations right now. Get on that page.
so Tony, talk a little bit about, kind of in your view, what makes the best comedy?
Hello first, how are you? What makes the best comedy? I can only speak from my perspective because people have different interests with comedy. But what I love, and I think for those of you who have watched Veep, a lot of you probably haven't because it's the language is colorful. But what it kind of does is it kind of takes a behind-the-scenes look at what might be happening in D.C. And I personally love that because I think as a society, we kind of put people on pedestals and it's just like, oh, you're amazing, everybody's amazing. But then you don't really see that, that person might have had diarrhea before he did a speech or something like that. And it's like, but the thing is when you hear, or when something on the show, you hear that person not having diarrhea, but had just had diarrhea. It's like in yourself, you're like, oh, I've had diarrhea. Like I can relate with that. What it does is I think it softens this kind of, it
softens, really?
It softens. That was good. It's a good catch. It was just a really smooth move. No, to me, it kind of, it makes you relate to the person. You know, it's not just such like a, you know, all we hear is the sound bites of politics, or we hear the great speeches, but we don't see the behind the scenes. And so to me, I love the comedy that really sees the humanity of it all. And also there's something about kind of taking that is also, but kind of taking the seriousness out of it. I mean, the fact is we're spinning on a planet. That's crazy. It's crazy. And we're walking around like we're not spinning on. I mean, we're spinning on a planet. And it's, you know, when you just kind of, life is heavy. It's heavy, heavy, heavy. And when you kind of have an opportunity, like I've been given the opportunity to kind of make light of that and just acknowledge that, I think that hopefully brings joy and it makes me laugh.
So how do you find these characters? Buster, of course, was a great character, but then you move into Gary. I mean, it's
Was he a great character?
But how do you find and develop a character like that? Does somebody just script that and say, Tony, we think this is you, or do you get in there?
That would be unfortunate.
And
So for those of you who haven't seen Arrested Development, it was a really crazy show. Very, very fun. But I played a character named Buster who was kind of a man-child, and he just had a lot of codependent issues with his mother. People have asked me a lot of times, how did I kind of develop that character? And it scares me how naturally it came to me. People were like, what's your process? And I was like, didn't have one. It just felt really natural. But I have a history of anxiety. I've struggled with anxiety for a large part of my life. And so I guess there's something about kind of, I can understand a character that is based with a lot of anxiety. And the thing about when you develop characters, you have to find that part of the character that is inside of you. For instance, if somebody comes up to me and says, let me step back a little bit. I remember doing a movie a while ago. I won't say the name of it. It was an awful movie. But I was asked to play this character that was very entitled and was kind of like a guy who thought he was everything and stuff like that. It was kind of a player, whatever. I remember reading the character and being like, I don't like these kind of people. I don't like them. And somebody told me that, Tony, you have to find that part of the character that's actually inside of you. And I realized, like, the fact of the matter is, I've unfortunately had moments in my life where I've been a bit of a player. I've had entitled moments in my life. And when you don't separate yourself from that character, then you can bring a little more of an organic interpretation of the character. And so with Buster, he was really anxious, and so I kind of, I've had panic attacks in my past, and so I know what it's like to have a panic attack. And so kind of bringing a more of a real version of that kind of in the character.
Thank you for sharing that, being vulnerable about,
Sure. I'm a disaster. I've had a lot of therapy.
Let's talk a little bit about faith.
My disaster, sure.
Yeah, that'll be tonight.
Oh, great.
Let's talk about faith in your journey by the world standards, for sure. Lots of success. You've been at the top of your game, and yet I know faith and family has always remained central, critical, key. And a lot of people who don't live in the LA world or don't experience some of the things that you experience on a regular basis have a hard time understanding how all that works. Would you just kind of let us peer into how you think about faith as it relates to your work?
This is a Christian thing? No, I'm kidding. I can only kind of talk about maybe mistakes that I've made, and that's probably what I've learned the most of. But when I first kind of came to LA, I kind of had the idea of like, what's God gonna do through me? Let's see. And honestly, I think I probably during that season kind of pushed people away from God because the only person that needed to change was me. I needed to kind of realize that I had a lot of arrogance, that I talked and spoke to people more than listened to them. None of that is bridge building. And so, I kind of go back to the fact that I am a mess. I'm a huge work in progress. And when I kind of am honest about that and kind of just talk to people and hear their stories, and the fact is, my faith is everything to me. It's everything to me. But I love hearing about where somebody else is. I have a friend who's into Scientology, and I was asking them about, what is that? Like, tell me about it. And we had a really great conversation about it. So I think it's more of just, I think I had a real us-them mentality that I'm not very proud of. But hopefully through the years of just kind of realizing that man, I love being where I am, and I love learning about people and just trying to stop talking so much and just start listening. And that's what I've learned from, honestly.
That's awesome. Well, a lot of people also wonder about fame and celebrity, and even...
And I am a massive movie star. That makes total sense.
Well, but so many younger people today, I mean, one of the research stats David Kidman and I were talking about was how almost 3-to-1 middle schoolers would say they'd rather be an assistant to a celebrity than pursue being a lawyer or a doctor. Okay, so like they're pursuing, I'd rather be an assistant to a celebrity. That would be way better for my life than actually pursuing some of these other vocations. Is fame all it's cracked up to be?
It's amazing. No, it's a lot of free stuff. No, it's not.
You can afford socks.
I can afford great socks.
Good.
No. I think that's another thing I've really learned a lot about in this business is having been maybe a person in the public eye or whatever, I've kind of thought a lot about it. And the base of fame is everybody wants to be known. Everybody wants to be known. And they look at fame as the ultimate being known. Or they look at how many Twitter followers you have, how many Instagram followers, like, oh my gosh, you are so known. But the thing is, if you're known by people you love, that's all the known you need. Because the more, that's right. Guys, wisdom is being thrown at you. No. But it's because the thing is, what's interesting, if you really think about it, the people that have massive fame, what comes with that is a lot of isolation. And that thing, and then you take somebody who has a 9-to-5 job in Birmingham, Alabama or whatever, they actually are more known than the person who's hugely famous. Because the person who's hugely famous has to actually live in isolation because they don't trust people who come to them. So it's the opposite of what everybody thinks it is. It's the opposite of being really known. So I do love to talk about that because I think it's a different way to look at it.
Yeah, and I think from even our earlier talks by Babette today about listening, how much even in your own story with the empathy and your characters as well as here, just how much more known we can be and others can know us if we listen and enter into a real relationship. Yeah. Let's thank Tony for spending a few minutes with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I hope you laughed. I hope you enjoyed hearing what Tony had to say. I thought a few things. He said, life is heavy. Find opportunity to make light of that. And that's obviously how he does his humor. But it was just a good reminder to me, to each of us, like, let's just think that way. And then the other point that was just awesome, he talked about fame because so many people think being famous is like the end all. I know in research studies that Barna has done, they talked about how within millennials, that a high percentage of them would rather be an assistant to a celebrity than to pursue careers such as being a doctor or a lawyer. And it's just interesting that there's just this vision that if I can be around fame, then life will be good. And he actually totally rocks that idea by saying fame is the opposite of being really known. And I think that's just a good reminder to all of us. It's always fun to talk to people like Tony who are having to live this out. It's very real. It's day to day, trying to be a successful person in the career and in the calling that they have, but also lead his family well and be engaged in relationship with his friends, his community, and his church. So I thought this was a fun one. I hope it made you laugh. Invite a few friends to come listen to it. People who maybe aren't connected into the church or don't think much about podcasts like this, but this might be one where we all can listen to it. We all can just enjoy the story of somebody who's trying to live out their faith in a way that's both credible and authentic, but also true to who they are. So I hope this encourages you. I also want you to mark your calendar for August 16th. That's when we're going to have our next Q&A, and that's our online series where we're actually allowing you to view a newly released Q Talk from our event this past year, and also hear me interact and ask questions of that presenter, but also take your questions so you can ask questions. And listen, this was the most probably buzzworthy topic we've had at Q, and I, as far as I can remember, in several years, where everybody in the room couldn't stop talking about it. And the topic, it's going to make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. It was on demonology and exorcisms. Yes, you heard that right, demonology and exorcisms. And we were talking to Adam Bly, who's essentially for the Catholic Church, the expert on exorcisms. And he actually educates priests and walks with them through doing exorcisms. I know some of you are freaking out right now. What would that be about? Well, you have to tune in on August 16th to hear my interview with him at Q. But then follow-up questions. We want to hear your questions. What do you want to ask somebody who understands exorcism and also understands 2,000 years of church history with the Catholic Church, of how demons act, how they react, what they always do, the things that have never changed since the time of Jesus, and then the things we're dealing with today that seem to be pretty new and unique. And so it's going to be just so insightful, and it will be something you won't forget. So join us August 16th for our next Q&A series. You can join us at qideas.org/summer series for that. Well, I hope you have a great weekend. Invite more and more of your friends, people at church, people at work, to just join in, subscribe to the Q podcast. You can also see our talks at qideas.org, where we're releasing talks every week, hopefully dealing with topics and helping you be equipped so that you can be faithful as you try to engage a changing cultural landscape, but do it with joy and hope and excitement and enthusiasm about what God's up to in this moment. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Gabe Lyons. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.